So this was one of my favorite episodes we've ever filmed for the show. I had my good friend Steve Rozenberg on, who is an airline pilot. He's been one for over 25 years, and he ended up selling a property management company for multiple millions. What we went over in this show is super cool. He talked about what it is like to lose your job on September 11th and what it was like during the pandemic as a pilot. He also talks about what it's like, going through the air and having an engine go out and having to just deal with being struck by lightning on a plane and all these other crazy things that pilots experience. You don't want to miss that. On top of that, he goes over just everything with building an education business and mentoring people. He's now got his mindset coaching business, which is super cool. And he's just taking everything he's learned from being a pilot, from building businesses to real estate, and incorporating it into one thing. He even shifted my mindset a little bit after this episode. So you want to make sure you stay till the end because it is a great episode. Now, let's get into it.
Are you looking to grow your real estate investing business? My company, Future Flipper, can help. We've taught hundreds of people all over the country how to flip, wholesale, and buy rental properties. And it doesn't matter where you're at in your investing journey. Whether you're trying to get your first deal or scale your company, Future Flipper can help. We have courses, coaching, and events for all levels of investors. So if you want to take the next step, go to futureflipper.com and book a free consultation to see how we can best help you. Once again, that's futureflipper.com. If you've ever wanted to invest with me on my real estate deals, it's now possible. At Pineda Capital, we're purchasing value-add real estate all across the country. This includes multifamily, commercial, and land development. The best part is, with my network, social media presence, and marketing strategies, we're able to get the very best deals that others don't have access to. You can join in with me on those deals if you're an accredited investor. If you want to learn more, head over to pinedacapital.com to see our current opportunities. Once again, that's pinedacapital.com. Welcome to the Ryan Pineda Show, where our mission is to invest.
I only expect to make money in things that I understand.
Innovate.
It's about believing in the future and thinking that the future will be better than the past.
And inspire.
I am much more likely to hit my goal just due to putting it out there.
You're now rocking with the best.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Ryan Pineda Show. Today we have our second virtual episode ever, and I am here with my good buddy Steve Rozenberg. What's up, dude?
What's happening, brother? Good to see you, man.
Yeah, so cool story about Steve. I'll kind of give you guys a quick preview of his background before I let him tell the story. But this guy's done a lot of things. He has been a pilot. He sold a property management company that was fully automated by virtual assistants all over the country. He does coaching. He does mentorship. Him and I have been talking about him as a personal brand and ways that he can continue to grow that. And I'm sure there's a bunch of other stuff other than being insanely jacked and huge that I don't even know about. So, dude, man, where do we even begin?
I tell people I'm like an onion. I got a lot of layers,
Yeah.
And so, you and I met at the Mastermind in Maui about 2 years ago.
2 years ago with Brandon Turner and Bigger Pockets.
And Tarl and stuff, yeah. And, at the time, I was right in the process of selling my property I was in the process of beginning the phase of selling my property management company. And, prior to that, being an airline pilot, everyone has their pre-life, right? You're very similar to I in the sense that I never even wanted to get into real estate. I didn't know anything about it growing up. I just wanted to fly planes. And getting into, being a pilot, I had the best, safest job in the world until September 10th, 2001. September 11th, we all know the tragedies that happened. And 48 hours after that is when I got my furlough notice.
Wow.
And all of a sudden it was like, hey, thanks for being this great employee, but we don't need you anymore. And good luck. And it was, for anyone that's ever had something like that happen, it's very, very humbling. And I realized that nobody cares about me more than me. And that's how I started getting into real estate. So just like you playing baseball and having another life, I didn't know anything about real estate, didn't plan on it. I wouldn't say I got pushed into it, but that was the direction I took as a secondary effect. Started buying houses, apartments, flipping, wholesaling, all, everything, doing them all wrong, like everyone does. Never flipped couches, but I flipped a lot of houses. And I evolved into creating a management company because I had such horrible, crappy houses. Nobody would manage them. So it was self-preservation. But at that time, that was the moment that we got our first business coach. And we stayed with that coach for 7 years.
Wow. And
that coach is actually the reason that we were able to scale and grow our company to the size that it was. Very large. We were in 3 cities. As you said, what we learned was we were running a business. We weren't property managers. And the business just happened to be, the product was property management.
Exactly. Yep.
And everybody would ask us, how are you guys growing? How are you scaling? How are you doing everything? It could be dog food, could be not hair products, but it could be something like that.
Hair product for me.
For you, yes. And so we just learned how to run a business from a pure business. So when you're talking about virtual assistants, we got very good. 60% of our company was run out of Mexico from virtual assistants because we learned how to scale and how to grow through systemization, all that. And then that was the time that we became a good offer for a company, a venture capital backed company. They ended up purchasing us shortly after we met. And then I kind of did a pivot and jumped into the investor world of being an influencer.
Got it.
And,
so before we get into that, let's talk a little bit about business and the property management stuff.
Sure.
So one, you said you hired a coach and that changed everything.
Absolutely.
What, can you share who that was or what the company was?
Sure. Yeah. The company was actually a franchise. A funny story about that. The franchise is called Action Coach.
Okay.
And the founder is actually in Las Vegas, Brad Sugars.
Oh, okay.
And
I might have to get him on the podcast.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And well, what's funny is as we were growing our company, I mean, we would never have been in business. I mean, we were one of the guys when we first interviewed the coach, he said, well, here's the thing. You guys have opportunity, you have marketability, and you have scalability. So by definition, you guys have a business. You two, meaning me and my business partner, are not the smartest guys in the world, and you'll be bankrupt in 6 months.
You guys are hustlers.
Yeah, you guys are not going to make it because you know nothing about business. And it's one of those things where you don't know what's coming around the next corner in business. We didn't know anything about, gap money. We didn't know anything about acquisition cost, lead strategies. We didn't know. I was a pilot.
Yeah.
They don't teach you that in flying school. They teach you how to fly a plane.
No business, marketing, nothing.
As we were scaling and growing our company, we were fanatical with our numbers and fanatical with systems and operations. And we learned that any business, whether it's an airline, whether it's a car company, anything is sales and marketing. And we really learned how to focus that. And coincidentally, the gentleman, Brad Sugars, who actually owns the whole franchise, which is in 83 countries, he ended up becoming a business partner of ours. And we brought him on as an ownership to scale it even faster, even bigger. And we were the first clients to ever bring him on. And it was like a Shark Tank deal kind of.
Yeah.
And it really, now we're talking to this mega guy who's getting into our heads of how to scale and how to grow at a much different level than anything else.
Yeah. No, I want to link up with Brad for sure, especially if he's in Vegas.
Yep.
So you hire Brad, things obviously just take a dramatic turn and you guys become business partners too. I mean, it's just, things are going like that.
It was great.
So the thing, when I first met you 2 years ago, you hadn't sold it yet, but I remember you telling me about the business and you're like, how many VAs did you guys have?
At the time we had about 20.
20 VAs. And how many properties were they managing?
We were managing about 1,000 single family homes.
Nice.
So, and we were in 3 cities.
What cities?
We were in Houston, Dallas, and Fort Worth, and they were all in Mexico.
Yeah.
And what we learned a lot of times, we're the biggest problem when it comes to business because we think we need to do it. And we think because it's our business, I have to do it. I put on my cape, get out of my way. I'm going to go jump in and do it. And the reality is that's not your job. Mm-hmm. Your job is to be the leader and the CEO of the business, not the doer. And so we learned that through KPIs, through metrics, and through scalability, anybody could do this task. And we were able to take, just to give you some numbers, our revenue per payroll was 59% of payroll of revenue. We got it down to 33% when we started outsourcing, with more employees doing better jobs. Mm. And so all of a sudden we were getting better service. And so we took the 80-20 concept, like everyone uses, and we turned it upside down. And we said, okay, why are these people calling us, right? Property management, you're a complaint desk. People call to either fire you or bitch at you. That's it. So we were like, okay, why are they calling? They're calling because there's a problem that we didn't get to first. So how do we solve the problem upstream? And through systemization, it was a failure maybe in our part, in a contractor's part, and someone's fault is the reason that owner or tenant is calling us. So how do we stop that call from happening? And so we went upstream to stop the problem. And we started doing it with virtual assistants. And we learned that we basically had 4 departments down there. We had a maintenance division, we had an accounting division, we had a tenant relations division, and we had an investor services division. And each team had about 4 or 5 employees in each team. And they all had their KPIs, and their KPIs kicked up to their team leader. And then those team leaders kicked up their KPIs to us at the leadership team. And so that's how we ran our company all through KPIs and metrics. And it was, there was no people, it was roles and duties.
Yeah.
And that's how we learned to really scale. And if we knew that the average property manager can normally manage about 120 to 140 doors. That's about the given standard property manager. The challenge is when you own a property management company, you're not making a profit until you're about 140 to 170. So it means you have to redline your best employee to actually make a profit.
Wow.
And that's why the longevity of a property manager is about 2 years. It's because they leave.
Yeah.
So we said, okay, how do we do a stress reliever and alleviate them? And so what we ended up doing is we got our property managers up to 300 to 350 doors because we had the teams in Mexico to offload them. Because they didn't need to be, hey, I don't know how to log into my portal. Why do I have to pay my rent? That's not a property manager. The property manager, we wanted them saying, hey, we're going to get sued if we don't answer this question. This is an owner who wants to buy more properties. That's what we want them doing. The 80-20 rule, 80% of the calls that come in,
There's BS.
they're just BS, but they have to be answered,
Yep.
but not by the property manager.
No, not at all.
And so that's how we were able to do this and scale it. And it proved very successful, which is one of the reasons we were acquired is because of our Mexico operation. One of the main reasons.
So are you allowed to talk about like what you got acquired for or anything like that?
I can tell you that it was a multiplier of revenue. And it was about just under 2 times revenue of that, which is on the high side of what companies were being bought for. I can't say the amount, but yeah, it was a good number.
Okay. You can tell me off camera.
I can tell you off camera, yeah. But it was a good number. They're very fair. This company manages about 8,000 properties. They're a venture capital funded company.
Yeah.
And they do a good job. They're a very tech-based company. They hired me once they purchased us. As a separate contract, they hired us as a VP of their investor education, and that's kind of when I started making the pivot shortly after and started working with Bigger Pockets and other people on the investing side. So that's kind of when I started kind of coming onto the scene as an investor. Because up until that point, I was speaking around the United States. I spoke around Australia. I did a lot of tours as a speaker, educator on the property management side, not on the investing side. So that's when I did that pivot.
For sure. And man, that's crazy just to see. A lot of people ask me, like, Ryan, why don't you get into property management or construction? Why do you have a brokerage? Why not offer that? I'm like, no way. I'm like, I do not want the headache. I don't want to. But I mean, if you systematize any business, right, you can alleviate the majority of the headaches, 80% of them.
Now, the great thing about a property management company is it's almost a recession-proof business because in good times, investors are buying.
Yeah.
In bad times, people can't sell their houses and they turn them into property management homes.
Yeah.
So so in that regard, it's good. And it's I hate to say it, but property management is a nickel and dime business. You make a lot of money on ancillary fees, but you can make a lot of money. It is a very profitable business, but it is very process and procedure driven. Mm-hmm. And, when we had our property management company, we would do rehabs on our properties. And then we had other people saying, hey, I don't want you to manage it, but could you do a rehab on this property for us? So we thought, okay, 35, 40% profit margins when we did the math. We've already got the employees on staff. Sure. So we went to our business coach. We said, hey, we're going to start doing this. And he says, well, why don't you do the dry cleaning? They need haircuts. Why don't you cut their hair? Why don't you wash their cars? He's like, where does it stop? He's like, focus on your focus. He's like, don't deviate. You guys have a plan. You have a goal. He's like, if you're going to change it, that's fine. But now you got to change the goal of the business. You got to change the plan. You got to change everything. And that was, he used to always reel us in from those shiny objects. So yes, you could, but at what opportunity cost?
100%. I see people do that all the time, especially, good example would be realtors. they'll get like one client who wants to buy a house in some random place. Like, should I get licensed here? I'm like, no, you don't.
Not at all.
No, like just because you have one opportunity, it's not good. So before we get into, the influencer side and all that, you talked about being a pilot, and you're still a pilot today?
Still a pilot. I fly a 787.
So still a pilot today. And you've been through a couple of things. I mean, you talked about September 11th, getting furloughed. How was it during COVID?
It's interesting. So I've been through September 11th. I was been through 2008 recession, SARS, foot and mouth disease, oil, $140 a barrel. Like, we used to joke and be like, the locusts are coming next for us. Cause I mean, just
the plagues.
Yeah. Cause the airline industry is a very volatile industry, right? A lot of, if you're in it, it's very volatile. And the one thing that I learned is, people ask me, they say, what's the difference of you today versus the difference of you 20 years ago during 9/11? Because a lot of people are losing their jobs with the airline industry and stuff. And we don't even know the real repercussions of this just yet, because it's been,
still new.
It's still new. And I tell them the only thing I can tell you the difference is action. Like, I took massive action after 9/11, more so because my back was against the wall and I had no choice. I had to feed my family, had to figure shit out because I had no idea. And so I'm in a much different place now than I was then. But what's interesting is, both mentally, financially, all that stuff. What's interesting, though, is that the people that I flew with back then that are still pilots that never did anything, they're just as worried today as they were 20 years ago. And I'm like, you had 20 years to do action. But because you're lazy, because you're greedy, because whatever reason you chose not to do something, now, and I remember, I'll tell you a story. I'll never forget, I got delivered my furlough notice, and about a week after, so during 9/11, all the planes that were in the air had to land immediately or they would be shot down. I don't know if you remember this story, but
it's crazy.
Everybody had to land immediately. So wherever you were, you had a circle and you had to land. Well, about a week later, they were dispatching all the pilots to pick up these planes. And so I remember I get dispatched to go to Denver Airport and pick up a plane. And I'm already given my furlough notice. I'm like a dead man walking, basically. I have no job. So I'm walking through the terminal. I'm walking through Denver Airport. And me and the other pilot, there's no one there. There's no humans there. No planes are flying. And I'm walking through. It's very eerie, this huge cavernous building. And I remember looking out at the planes they're just like a cemetery parked in a jigsaw puzzle. I mean, it was very surreal. And I remember looking out and thinking to myself, my life as I know it will never be the same again. Like, I believed in an illusion of a safe, secure job, and it's gone. Nothing that I did, I didn't do anything to cause this, but now I'm a byproduct of it. And I relied on a company thinking that the company would take care of me. And that's not the way it works. It's like the world is changing.
Yep.
And I remember that day I vowed to myself, I said, you know what? I am never, ever going to let anyone else dictate my future or be able to dictate what happens to me. And that was kind of the day, that's when I started like figuring it out. So it's kind of like a fire underneath me. So I always tell people, I always remember that day, and I always tell people, never let, anyone else control your destiny or control your life. And that's ever since then, people are like, you sold a business, you're an airline pilot. I'm like, you know what? When your back is against the wall, you always remember that. And it's still ingrained in my head to this day of that feeling. And maybe I'm running from the fear. I don't know, but that's just how I'm wired now.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, it's literally happened almost every 10 years. You had 2001,
Yep.
You had 2008, you had COVID.
Yep.
If you don't have control, either as an entrepreneur or, passive income or side hustles or whatever, you are at the mercy of the market, the business, your employer, and there's a lot of times nothing you can do about it. I mean, it's not your fault, but, companies got to do whatever they got to do.
Yeah.
And I was really curious to see how this would play out for the airlines because I'm like, man, are they going to get bailed out? What's going to happen? Are they going to consolidate? What do you think is going to happen to them?
I think all the above. Now, the one difference I will tell you that I've seen with the airline industry right now is they're taking advantage of running the cargo. So I fly a 787, I fly all over the world, and we'll run empty flights, but the belly is full of cargo. Like I was out of Santiago, Chile the other day, and we took 75,000 pounds of salmon, and it was going to Tel Aviv. So when you think about it, only stuff that's on FedEx and UPS is FedEx and UPS. The US mail, all of that other stuff, it runs in the belly of airlines.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So all the airlines are shut down. So the airlines, some of the major airlines, United, Delta, American, they went to, all this stuff was piling up at the ports. So those airlines said, wait a second, you guys have stuff that needs to go. We have planes that we need to pay leases on.
Yeah.
Let's do this. So what they started doing is they said, if you can fill a plane, we'll go. And so the cargo forwarders were like, done. So all of a sudden we started running cargo. So I'll give you an example. On Monday, I'm flying to Frankfurt, Germany, and it's an all cargo flight. No passengers, no flight attendants, it's all cargo. And they're making money with the cargo in the belly.
What were they doing before? Was it just shipping containers on the ships? How was USPS sending mail before?
Well, it goes in the bellies of airlines. It still does. The problem is a lot of airlines are not flying. So like I'll go to South America and the whole fleet of an airline, that country's airline, is parked. So the KLM, I was in Amsterdam a couple weeks ago, and all the KLM planes are parked. So we don't run it just on US airlines. They'll go on other airlines also. Even Amsterdam, they have mail. It's got to get somewhere.
Yeah.
None of that's going anywhere. So it normally goes like it's normally in conjunction with your bags. So we have sections that are just cargo that will take stuff.
I did not know that. That's really cool.
Yeah.
It's a good way to double up and get that add-on.
Well, and not go bankrupt, basically.
Yeah, exactly. You got to do what you got to do.
Exactly.
It's kind of like, how Uber came in or Airbnb came in and said, hey, you got this extra car, this extra, house, like make some money on it.
Exactly.
Space.
It's audibilizing,
yeah.
Which is smart business.
Yeah. The world's becoming more efficient in every single way possible. And so I love seeing like that. That's cool. I never even thought about that. You as a pilot, are you working specifically with one company or are you kind of freelance?
No, I work for a company. Probably shouldn't say who it is, but I do work for a major airline. Been with them, got hired with them in 1998.
You've been with them for a minute.
Yeah. Well, and I was based in Guam, flew out of the South Pacific. I was all over Asia, Australia, all that stuff. Came back to the U.S., got based in Houston. They subsequently merged with another carrier back in 2011, 2014. Now I'm with the other carrier. Pretty senior. So I kind of get where I fly a couple times a month. So a lot of people that follow me on social media, they'll see I'm in Buenos Aires or Sydney, Australia.
Do you just do it for fun at this point?
You know what? It's funny. A lot of people ask me, they're like, why do you fly? And they're like, why don't you quit? And here's my answer is, where is it written that we have to quit our jobs? If I love what I do, I fly 2-3 times a month. I fly a $200 million aircraft around the world. 2-3 times a month. Why would I quit that?
Yeah.
The only time I have to answer to someone is if I mess up, and then you're probably on the news. So,
yeah.
But it's one of those things I always tell people, I'm like, I love what I do. Like when you get to this level of being a pilot, it's because you've worked hard your whole life and you love it.
Yeah.
I love getting in a plane, seeing the sun rising over, the Atlantic, coming up over Iceland. I mean, it's to me, it's just a passion. So I don't think I'll ever quit it until I stop liking it.
Yep.
And what's interesting is I call it the Guns N' Roses theory. There's a lot of people that make a lot of money that are miserable, right? And there's a lot of people, a lot of airline pilots that hate their job because they're wrapped around the axle of the job. I don't know anything about the job. I go in, I fly, I do my trip, I go home, right? I'm in other towns. I do podcast shows, videos. I used to do the route from Houston to Sydney, Australia, nonstop. For 2 years, I was doing that. And 17-hour nonstop flight. And then when I would get to Sydney, I was coaching real estate businesses. So I'd have 3 days there. So I'd go and do business there.
Yeah.
And I tell people, I'm like, look, until this becomes a problem and I hate it, then I'll quit. And other people, that's all they have.
Yeah.
So all they're doing is bitching about what they don't have in the unit. I'm like, I don't care, man. This is just a means.
It's fun. It's a hobby.
Exactly. That pays well. It's a well-paying hobby, so I can't complain.
Well, any hobby that pays you is cool.
Absolutely.
Usually we pay for our hobbies.
Absolutely.
No, I love that, dude. Side note, I love that Tom Hanks movie. What was it called?
Castaway?
Not Castaway.
That one was
the one
not
where he's the pilot over the Hudson.
Sully.
Yeah, Sully.
Yeah.
I love that movie.
Yeah.
Also, side note, I just flew first class for the first time ever, like a couple months ago.
Nice, man.
It was nice.
Yeah.
And before that, I just didn't care. I'm like, I'll fly coach. Like, I don't care. Like, I'm used to traveling on buses in the minor leagues. Like,
exactly.
I don't need it. But then, I flew first class for a couple times, and then I flew coach again. I was like, this sucks.
This sucks. I tell people, it may be a couple feet, but it's a world of difference.
It is. Once you do it, you're like, man.
Yeah.
I can't go back.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that the pilots, a lot of them, they might be lazy. And I look at it, I'm like, man, pilot looks like one of those jobs where it kind of reminds me of firefighters, I should say. You have a lot of downtime.
Correct.
You're just sitting there, I don't even know how many hours a week pilots work, but like it seems like it'd be the perfect thing to start investing in real estate.
It is. For me, it is because I fly 3 times a month, right?
Yeah.
So I fly down to South America and I got a day or 2 days off. That's my time.
Yeah.
I can do whatever I want. So I can go look at real estate. I can coach people. I can do podcast shows.
Yep.
I may be the weird guy stuck in his room all day, but I can do that stuff.
Yeah.
But you get a lot of leeway because the only time I'm on the clock is, when we're sitting
flying.
in the seat and pushing back and spinning engines and stuff. Other than that, it's your time. So it's great for flexibility. It's also dangerous because a lot of pilots end up doing stupid shit because they're like, oh, I'm going to start a gumball machine business and I'm doing it, and no experience, no knowledge, none of that,
Yeah. Well, I was thinking when you were saying they were doing dumb stuff, I was thinking you're going to talk about the bar and just like getting into trouble.
That too. That happens
that's a
too.
given.
Yeah, that's a given. Like any pro athlete. Look, you always have the percent. The chief pilot's office normally is. I remember one time I was flying down to Rio de Janeiro and it was with the chief pilot and he says, "How long you been here?" And at the time it was like 13 years. I said, "Oh, I've been here like 13 years." He's like, "Man, we'd never met." And I said, "You know what? No offense, but I don't want to meet you." He goes, "That's a good thing." He goes, I know the 10%. There's a 10% of the company that we're always dealing with. Those are the problem people." I'm like, "Yep."
What's the craziest story from your pilot days, would you say?
Oh man, I've got a lot of them.
Just give me like one of them.
All right, I'll give you one. So one day we are flying from Houston to Amsterdam. And our alternate was Dusseldorf, Germany, because the weather was pretty bad in Amsterdam. So whenever there's a bad weather, it was snowing and windy and all that. And so we had an alternate airport. So we're coming in and we're holding because they're trying to plow the runway and all this stuff. So we're sitting there basically spinning holes in the sky, essentially. And all of a sudden, the weather in Dusseldorf went down. So they're like, "Hey, that's not your alternate anymore. Now your alternate is Milan, Italy. And so that's like a 3-hour trek now. So we got fuel, but we're like, when you're flying, you have what's called a bingo fuel. So that's basically, at that point, you have to have enough fuel to get from where you are to the destination, to the alternate, shoot a couple of approaches, and still have a reserve, right? Because if not, those things don't run on wishes and ferries, right?
No,
they run on fuel. They run on fuel. So we're sitting there, we're holding, and all of a sudden now like we had like a 2-hour window that we could hold for. Now that went down to like 20 minutes. So we tell control, we're like, "Hey, we got about 20 minutes and we got to go." They're like, "Okay, we'll try to give you guys priority." So all of a sudden we're like 3 minutes from that. And they're like, "Hey, we're going to go." They're like, no, you guys are cleared in. We got the runway cleared. You guys are cleared in. So I'm like, okay. So I was flying the plane and we're coming in and we're just getting the crap knocked out of us, coming in, bouncing, one of those worst case scenarios. Right. And so we break out. We're probably about 500 feet above the ground. We break out and I'm like, I don't see it. Like, I don't see the runway. And he's like, "It's over here." The plane was just coming in sideways, and I had to look out that window to land the plane. This is like 300 people. Like, this is a 767.
Okay.
And all of a sudden, I'm like, I was like, "Oh, you gotta be shitting." So, I mean, we're basically coming in sideways because it was so windy.
Dang.
And we land. I mean, it was just one of those days, man. You're just fighting every inch. It's one of those falls that just keeps falling. This landing just kept happening. Boom, boom, boom. We get on the ground and we're just like, "Oh man, oh my god." Okay, we
made it.
Cool. So we get to the terminal. We passengers get up and we get up and I'm like, "I gotta go pee, man." So I get up and I'm standing there and this passenger goes, "Why are we late?" I'm like, like, "Are you kidding?" Like, you were almost in Milan. You have no idea. So they don't get it. I get, but I mean that was one of those times that you're like, man, this almost is out of control. Like it was that bad that like we couldn't see the instruments. You're bouncing around and you're just like, I mean, it was just one of those days that you're just along for the ride. This 600,000-pound aircraft. Sometimes you're just along for the ride. It's going to do what it does.
That's insane, dude.
Yeah.
Super scary.
Yeah, you're telling me.
You had to land it.
People are like, "Aren't you scared that you're going to kill all those people?" I'm like, I'm up front. I'm seeing it coming.
Yeah. Yeah. They have no idea.
They have no idea. We're watching it.
Yeah. Dude, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Another thing I just thought about while you're telling that story, because you're talking about fuel and, you're seeing Tesla and the electric car revolution. You think that's ever going to happen with planes?
I think it could, although I will say that, look, these planes, it's a lot. That's going to be a lot of energy. Let's just say that. I mean, I used to do Houston to Sydney, Australia, just give you an example. And when we would take off, we'd be over 600,000 pounds of weight. 220,000 pounds of that is fuel. So that thing's going for 17 hours nonstop in the fuel. And I remember like we have bunks and we'd sleep. There's a crew of 4 of us and there would be bunks. And I remember waking up after 7 hours going, man, I cannot believe this thing is still in the air going. So that's a lot of energy that they're going to have to recreate to carry. I mean, 600,000 pounds.
That's a big battery.
That's a big battery. Yeah. So could it? I think it'll start with some form of hybrid and then it'll probably evolve into that. But I also think that, there's a lot of oil interest. There's a lot of fuel that airlines burn. And there's a lot of oil interest that I don't know that would allow that to happen.
Yeah.
So that's my take. I could be wrong, but I don't think it's going to take off as much as people think, because I think that when it comes down to dollars and cents and jobs and economies, that is predicated on oil. So I think I think there'll be a margin, a fractional margin, but I don't know. Also don't forget, when we're in the air flying and you get hit by lightning, that's electricity. And I mean, I've been hit by lightning before in a plane.
What's that like?
It scares the shit out of you, first of all. But I remember we were going like from Houston to Dallas or something, and there was thunderstorms and stuff, and so it's static electricity, and it's a discharge of static electricity, and you can tell when it's coming because all of a sudden it gets really bright and it kind of goes out, and then it comes back and it hits you, and you just see you could tell it's coming, and when it's coming, you kind of got to look down. And it sounds like a baseball bat hits the side of the plane. But the thing is with energy is it has to exit somewhere. So if you ever look at an airplane and you ever look at the wings, next time you're in an airplane, look at the wings and you'll see these like shoelaces that are on the edge of the wings. Those are static wick discharges. That's how the plane discharges the electricity. Because if not, it'll stay in the plane. Because it's potential energy that's just going back and forth. It needs to exit somewhere. So that's why a lot of times if you hit lightning, there's always an entry point and there's an exit point of the bolt because it's got to go somewhere. So if you are running all on electric and something like that happens, you better have something else, some backup electricity, because it is fried electrical. It'll fly your whole electrical system. And when you go over the top of the North Pole, so I've done stuff that goes over the top, comes in over the top of Russia, goes into Asia and stuff. You get polarity and your equipment doesn't work.
Whoa.
Because you're over the North Pole. So
That's crazy.
There's magnetic variances and stuff. So I don't know that I would feel comfortable 7 hours over the North Pole and all of a sudden stuff starts going crazy.
Like you said, it's going to be a hybrid.
I think it'll be a hybrid. I can see it being a hybrid. I don't see it being solely dependent on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, and nor do I see myself after hearing all that. Do I want to go on an all-electric plane?
Yeah.
I'm like, dude, if we get hit by lightning,
where are the static wicks on this thing? I need a static wick.
Dude. Yeah, okay. I'm glad I know that now. I'm fine driving my Tesla.
Yeah.
But
it's on the ground.
I'm not worried about getting hit by lightning.
Yes.
Dude, okay, cool. All right, well, all right, now I want to transition into, the next phase of your life. But before we do that, let's hear a quick word from our sponsors.
Have you ever wanted to invest in real estate, but you didn't have the time to find deals yourself? That's where Fundrise comes in. Fundrise is a crowdfunding platform that has transacted over $5 billion in real estate and has over 150,000 active investors. While many funds, like my own, require accredited investors, Fundrise allows anyone to invest with as little as $500. If you'd like to learn more, check out fundrise.com. Once again, that's fundrise.com. We all know that I love creating passive income through rental properties, but did you know that you can create passive income through owning an e-commerce store? My company, Lunar Ecom, can build and manage a store for you on Amazon or Walmart. We'll handle everything from starting the store, picking the products, and all the day-to-day operations. It's completely passive for you. If you'd like to learn how store owners are making thousands a month in passive income, head over and watch the case study at lunarecom.com. It will explain everything you need to know about the industry and why I'm so excited about it. So to see the case study, head over to lunarecom.com.
All right, so let's get back to this next phase of your life. You were a pilot, you still are, just obviously less full-time now.
Yes.
And you sell your property management company, which you have been building up for years and
Correct.
all that. And so Now you go into this stage of becoming a real estate investor and a coach and all that. Talk about that.
Yeah, I think my perception of this whole thing we call life is, your life is a book and you have chapters, just like you had a chapter of playing pro sports.
Right.
I've had chapters and the one thing I've learned is chapters begin and chapters end. And you can't carry that chapter forward. So for me, the end of the chapter for the property management company, that was the end. It wasn't, I didn't need to milk it and kill it. It was doing good. It was time to sell for me. It was time to flip the chapter. So the new chapter of my life, if you will, is I feel I'm passionate about helping people, right? Look, you and I, we don't need the money. We don't do what we need to do for money. Money's great. Don't get me wrong. We love money.
Yeah.
Buy some cool shit with money, but I don't need it. And so I always tell people, like, what I do is I do this because I like helping people. It's just something I like. So I really, when I sold the company after we had met and stuff, I thought, okay, where can I have the biggest impact? And I didn't know much. I was an investor and dealing with that. And I was doing, like I said, I did some tours through Australia as a speaker around the United States. So I was already speaking on the circuit on the property management world. But I thought, okay, how can I take all this knowledge of business, aviation, investing from a different perspective, from a different lens, and try to help some of these investors? I mean, at one point, I would probably guess I've probably invested somewhere between $500,000 to $700,000 in coaching, right? And all the different coaches. And at one point I had 3 coaches coaching me for all different things in my life. And so I'm a big believer in leveling up and getting to that level, And so I just thought, how can I take all this information and pass it on? Because one of the things I'm a big believer in, and I say this very respectfully of all the entrepreneurs watching this, is we can be very selfish as investors and entrepreneurs. And the reason I say that is we watch this show, we take courses, we go to seminars, and we're doing this to provide a better life for our family, but we don't share what we're doing with them. The spouse, the children, they have no idea what we're doing. We're just, we want to have that hero and we want to help, but at what cost? Because they don't even know what we're doing. So I think it's important to bring everyone into the fold. My son, he bought his first rental property at 14 years old. And a lot of people ask me, well, how? How did he get a loan? How did he find comps? And I tell them, you're asking the wrong question. What you should be asking is why? Why did a 14-year-old come to me and say, Dad, I want my own passive income? Because I see what you're doing. That's the question. So a lot of times we're so focused on the how, I think we're missing the boat. Everybody wants to be a good flipper, a good wholesaler, a good this, a good that. But for what? Like, why? That's like saying I want to get on the freeway. Where are you going with it? What is it, the life you want to have? And is that even what your family wants? And so the reason I'm passionate about this is when I was in my, initial days of buying real estate and buying as much as I could, my wife was like, why are you doing all this? And I was like, well, I'm doing this for us. And her response was, what do you mean us? You've never asked me.
Yeah. How do you know I want that?
Exactly. Like,
Yeah.
You're more stressed. You're gone more. You're not happy. Us or you? And so a lot of it is ego, right? There's a lot of self-checking. You're like, oh yeah, I never really thought about that. It's like, maybe we just want you around more and we just want you happy.
Yeah.
And so again, I say this very respectfully because I've been there. We think we know what we want, but we don't really know why we're doing it and what the family wants. So I just think that one of the things that we should all do as investors is really step back, take a breath, look at what we're doing and why we're doing it, and really make sure that it aligns with what we want out of life. Even if you just want it for yourself, but really ask yourself, what is it you want? And I've been coached and mentored and trained so much on understanding the mindset. The 6 inches between your ears, that is the most powerful thing to either make you successful or make you miserable and a failure.
Yeah.
And I believe that success and successful people have a recipe, right? There's a recipe for people that are successful, right? You and I know this. We get coached by them. We get mentored by them. We learn the recipe. But I also believe there's a recipe for failure. And we make a choice every day what recipe we're going to follow. Every day we make that choice. When we wake up in the morning, we say, okay, which way am I going? Not making a choice is making a choice.
Right.
And so I'm a big believer in just trying to help people understand that they are making a conscious decision. And first, more importantly, I'm trying to help them understand the mindset of why they're even doing it. What's their why? Because the why is what carries you through the dark days. The days that you're sitting by yourself at nighttime, you don't have the fake media, you don't have the Instagram, you don't have it, and you start wondering, going, is this going to work? Like, am I actually, like, in 20 years from now, am I going to be what I want, or am I going in the wrong direction and not even going to get to my goal? And do I even have a goal? So I'm a big believer in learning that and trying to pay that forward as much as I can.
I love that, dude. And yeah, I'll tell you, with the family stuff, I'm a big believer in like, hey, think about what it is you're doing. Like, why are you doing it? Like you said, when I talk to my family, my wife is very clear. She's like, hey, we don't need the money. Like, we're fine where we're at. We were fine way before at this point.
Right.
And, we just have kind of our boundaries where it's like, hey, I understand you want to be out there on social media and do this stuff. Like, great, support you in that. I understand you love starting businesses and making money and doing these things. Like, totally support you in that. And for her and for me, it's like when I go to work, it's like going to play. I'm going to go play with my friends and but just make sure you're home by 5. Make sure you have us on the weekends and
disconnect.
Yeah. We go on family vacations. Just make sure that, your playtime with your friends where you're making money and doing stuff doesn't like go so long.
Separate it. Yeah. Yeah. I agree. And it's really hard. Look, you and I both know it's very hard to separate those things in the sense of, one, it's very easy when you work from home and you've got all these other businesses, it's very easy to let them bleed into your personal life. And, for example, one thing I do is when I get home, I take my phone, I put it up on the counter and I'm done with it, because I know how I am. I know if it's on me, and I'll
respond.
Yeah, I'm going to respond. And so there's an opportunity cost for that. The opportunity cost is your family, because someone is not getting your attention if someone else is. Right. And so I've just learned the value of that. And look, here, someone had taught this to me. And I always tell people, the average person lives 4,400 weeks a year. If you are 38 years or older, you have 1,950 Wednesdays left in your life. What do you do with them? Right.
Yeah.
So that's powerful. When you think about that, you're going, okay, how are you spending your time? Am I just being busy? Being reactive. So many people are so reactive in their life, right? You talk to them and they're like, I'm like, what'd you do today? I don't know, but I was busy putting out fires, doing this, doing that, because they live a reactive life. Because, you and I both know very, very successful people, and they have more free time than the average person, but they're 10 times more successful. So working hard, being the hardest worker in the room, does not guarantee you success, because if that was the case, construction people and day laborers would be the wealthiest people on the planet.
Right.
And so it's a lie we tell ourselves to make ourselves feel good, but we all know it's not the truth.
Yeah. And
so it's a matter of saying, okay, it's leverage. It's understanding the power of communication. It's understanding the power of mindset, understanding what your focus is. And, I've heard some people say this earlier, and you may have even said it, to me, and very successful people taught me this. They said it's a matter of saying no and deselecting. It's not saying yes to everything. It's what am I going to say no to today? And that's a weird thing to think about, because when you think of success, you think I'm going to say yes to everything, every opportunity. But you're actually are saying no, but you're probably saying no to the wrong things. And so that really resonated with me. And that's what I try to teach people, understanding that.
Yeah. No, I love what you said about being reactive. So many people, right? I'm not going to let the world dictate what I do.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, I'm going to try and enforce my will on what it is I'm trying to accomplish, my dreams, my, desires and the things I want to do. And the world is going to, react to me in either a positive or negative way. Like, I put out a video, it does good, it does bad, whatever. The world reacts, and then I get to choose how I adjust.
Right.
And I can react negatively to it and be like, oh man, everyone hates me. That video flopped and poor me. Everyone's making fun of me, whatever.
Yeah.
Or I can say, okay, I didn't get the reaction I wanted. I'm going to adjust. I'm going to go do it again and just keep pushing on. And so most people let their circumstances just, dictate their life, which is not where it's at.
Yeah. I think the reality is look, when you are set with a failure, it's either I shouldn't even say it's a failure. It's either a lesson. It's a lesson either way.
Yep. And whether you realize it or not.
Exactly. And how you respond to it and how you react to that lesson. You will learn more from the losses, the failures, and the lows in your life than you ever will from the highs and the wins. And look, right now in real estate, it's a boom time. Everyone's an expert. Right? Everyone's cashing these, Photoshop paychecks, and they got these rented cars, and everyone's a guru, right?
Right.
And so the challenge is what happens to these people when the market shifts right? Because that's where the lessons are really learned. You and I know this, right? The lessons are learned in the dark days and the dark nights of saying, okay, now what do I do? What is there a lesson here? And look, I've been in business long enough, and I've made a lot of mistakes. I've been ripped off and all that stuff. And at the time, you don't say, well, there's probably a good lesson here, right? We don't say that. But at the end of the day, when you can, and I learned a lot of this from flying, of dealing with emergencies. I've learned that when you can step back and you can separate your emotions from the situation. And I've never met a successful person who said, you know what? I made an emotional decision. It was a knee-jerk reaction, and that was the smartest thing I ever did. I've never met that person, right? No. Everyone says, you know what? I probably shouldn't have said that. I probably shouldn't have sent that text message, because it's emotions. This is business. There's nothing in business that says emotions are priority.
Right.
And so I learned a lot of that from flying, and I learned a lot about stepping back, taking a breath, assessing what's going on, figuring out and the challenge is, a lot of times you have to identify the problem. But here's the challenge with that is, once people identify the problem, they focus on that as opposed to focusing on the solution. So imagine driving down the street and you hit a pothole. And now you're staring in your rearview mirror at the pothole that you hit that you can't change. It's already hit it.
You already did it.
When you have a windshield in front of you to make sure you don't hit the next pothole.
Yeah.
And we make business decisions on past emotional experiences on how we interpreted that. And we go, I would never buy a flip in Las Vegas. I got ripped off one time. Vegas is a horrible market.
Yep.
And it's like, well, that's not facts. That's just your emotional opinion, because the data is actually saying something different. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of times in aviation, they teach us, don't focus on the problem. There's many, many times that you can step back and you can assess the situation when you're on the ground and cause blame and all that. Now, let's figure out the solution.
Right.
And a lot of times when we look at the solution, sometimes we think it's a derivative of what the problem is. I'll give you an example. You know, I use this a lot. If you're flying in the air, people talk about emergencies. Like, I've got an emergency, my tenant won't pay me. A contractor ripped me off. With all due respect, that is not an emergency. You know, being in the air at 40,000 feet over the Pacific and having an engine catch on fire with 300 people, that's an emergency.
Right.
And if we can handle an emergency that way, you can handle a tenant not paying, right?
Right.
But let's put it in perspective. This isn't rocket science here, right? And so what I tell people is, if we have an engine catch on fire, right, which I've had before, a lot of bells and whistles are going off, hydraulic systems are shutting down, all these things. We have what's called an ICAS screen, which is all these messages are popping up telling us what's going on. And it'll say, like, you know, hydraulic systems down, fuel systems down. Well, you don't start working the hydraulic system, because the bigger problem is you got an engine on fire on the wing. That's actually the problem. So a lot of times when we look at problems in business or in real estate, we're focused on a derivative of the real problem. And so maybe the derivative of that problem, maybe the real problem was you didn't vet your contractor right. Maybe you didn't have an expectation meeting with your contractor of what the expectations were. Maybe you didn't have a conversation with your tenant about when rent is paid and what the consequences are per the lease agreement. And again, I get it in the heat of battle, but sometimes you got to step back and you got to focus on the solution, not dwell on the problem. And a lot of times, look, we all do it. It's a matter of seeing it, catching it before it becomes like an enigma of itself.
Yeah. I mean, how do you deal with that? You know, you're under stress. There's a legit emergency.
Absolutely.
But, you know, even for normal people who, like you just said, tenant's not paying, this is like the end of the world. This is a huge emergency. I mean, it is for them.
Sure.
I mean, perspective definitely for me and for you obviously helps. Like, you know, I've had real emergencies. Like, when I get one of these business emergencies, I'm like, just fix it. Like, it's whatever. But how do you just maintain that stress and like really look at things objectively, kind of put emotions aside in a stressful situation?
That's a good question. You know, I'll give you. Let me answer that with a bit of an analogy. When we were getting coached from our business coach, and we'd have an emergency, you know, me and my business partner are fighting or we're bitching about something, and we'd call him up like, "Hey, we got to talk to you." He on purpose would not call us back for 2 days because after a long time, we kind of figured out. He's like, "If I'm always solving your problems, I'm training you to come to me for the solutions. And most of the time, you guys will either solve the problem yourself, or it really wasn't a problem. It was an emotional outcry." So to answer your question, look, things are going to happen, right? Bad things are going to happen. That's part of the business we're in, right? We don't live in a bubble, right? You have a lot of things that are going to happen to you. And to answer the question, what you need to do, in my opinion, is you need to step back. You need to take a breath And if you have to, write it down and really, write down what's going on. Because the problem is when we're tumbling things through in our head, the way our brains work is we're always going to worst case scenario because 70% of the thoughts in our head are negative. So we're always going to the worst case scenario. Like when you tell people like, hey, I'm going to do this business, they're going to go, oh, man, why are you going to do that? That's a lot of work. It's like,
What if you lose?
Yeah. What if you lose? What if you go bankrupt? It's like, yeah, but I could win too.
Yeah.
I have a chance to win, but no one ever talks about that.
Right.
And so I always tell people, let's focus on what could we learn from this? And so it's just, again, it's one of those things that there's not a clear-cut answer. The clear-cut answer to me is take a breath, step back, remove yourself from the situation as much as possible, and look at it from the 10,000-foot view of saying, okay, what do I really have going on?
Yeah.
And if you can do that objectively, you will come up with a different answer than being in the heat of battle and doing this knee-jerk, say something, do something. Now, look, sometimes it's a matter of looking at your business model and saying, you know what? I kind of set up a bad business model. I didn't have reserves. I didn't screen my tenant properly. Is there some fault here to go, okay, next time, this is a stupid tax. I'm going to pay the tax on this. I'm going to take a hit.
Yep.
But what can I do next time not to do that? Maybe
Yeah.
I can improve my screening. Maybe I can make sure I vet contractors better. There is a lesson to be learned. And the only way you're going to learn that is by stepping back, taking a breath, not doing anything. Look, there's no such thing as an emergency really in business when you think about it. You don't have to do it knee-jerk immediately. You can step back, you can take a breath, you can look at it, you can assess the situation, and then you can make a decision based on facts and figures. And also bringing in your team. If you don't have a team, someone to give you some outsider's perspective, I think is very important.
No, I totally agree. And it's so funny you kept coming back to the breath. When I was playing pro baseball, and I learned this in college, and we had many psychologists and different, trainers teach us, or mindset trainers, I should say. And, when you look at sports is like as much pressure and stress as it gets.
Absolutely.
I remember, whether it's a playoff game or just a really important game, as the game gets closer to the end, bottom of the ninth, the pressure is there because everybody's been putting all this time and work into this final outcome. Mm-hmm. And, whether you're up to plate and, there's 2 outs, and if you don't get a hit, you lose, the game is over. Yep. Or if you're on the field and you know that, hey, if I don't make the play, if the ball's hit to me and I don't make the play, we lose. And you go through that every day. Yeah. That's what taught me to deal with pressure, because I, like everyone else, man, I would be very scared. I'd be like, man, I don't want to mess this up. Like, man. And then I start getting nervous. And then same thing with, hitting, same deal. And you just start to learn to detach from your emotions. You're like, hey, guess what? I've been practicing this for my whole life. Like, I've made this play a million times. Mm-hmm. I can, and then you're facing a pitcher. You got to just really visualize and trick yourself into like, I'm going to crush this guy. Like, because if you think about baseball, in hitting, you fail 7 out of 10 times. You're great.
You're a Hall of Famer.
Yeah. So you're like, yeah, the odds are definitely stacked against me. Like, most likely I'm going to fail, but I can also be a hero, like you said, by just getting over it. And one of the big things they taught us was the breath and the importance of the breath. And so we had this routine where anytime you just did not feel mentally ready or emotionally ready, you have to step off. And so if you're a pitcher, step off the rubber, take a breath. If you're a batter, just step off, call timeout, take a breath. Now, out on the field, you don't really have the luxury. You can't be like, hey, guys, time out.
Take a breath here.
Yeah.
Need a moment.
Everyone, chill. on the field, you have to really, but it's all a mental game. Nobody knows anything that you're going through.
Right.
It's all happening internally every day. So I would just say for me, I learned so much mentally from playing sports, and it's made business so much easier. I tell people all the time, like, they're like, man, how do you do it? How are you managing these people? Is it stressful? I was like, bro, it was way more stressful playing baseball than it was this.
Yeah. And it's funny. Like when you talk, I'm a big believer in watching athletes and learning from athletes. And, I had met Tim Grover before, who was Michael Jordan's personal coach.
Wrote a great book.
Relentless. Yeah. Great book. And, one of the things that I loved about the book and really learning about Michael is, he would practice 8 hours a day, every single day, for a single 1 hour game. And he had like 7 coaches, right?
Yep.
He had a shooting coach, strength coach, business coach, mindset, financial, all that. So you got to ask yourself, was he the best in history because he was practicing 8 hours a day and he had coaches, or did they bring that out of him? I don't think that if he didn't practice every day and he wasn't as focused, because you're practicing for all the case scenarios, right? So let's talk about business, right? When people tell me like, oh, I hate cold calling. I'm like, well, how many times do you cold call? Hundreds of times. Hundreds? 50. 50? 10. I did 3. Actually, I called 10, 2 answered, I sucked. Okay, that's not a lot. I'm like, until you do 500 a day, it's like shooting bat, it's like anything, right?
Yep.
You do it 500 a day, I guarantee you are going to suck on the first one.
Yeah.
But you're going to be much better on the 500th.
Right.
And so the problem is we say and act like we're professionals, right? I own a business, so I'm a professional. But we don't do what professionals do.
Right.
I mean, how much did you practice for a game?
The boring stuff is what makes the most money.
Absolutely.
We had Tim Bratz, who's hosting the event that we're both at right now, say that. He said, man, once business gets boring, that's when you start printing money.
Yep.
And it's the same for athletes, man. Like, we did the same thing every single day. I've taken probably hundreds of thousands of swings, probably over 1 million. And it's just like, you want it to be automated. Like, I could still right now walk out onto a baseball field, go crank a couple, throw the ball and do everything, because I've done it so many times.
Right.
And when people talk to me about social media and stuff, which we can go into, they see me film and they're like, damn, like, that was like, how'd you film that so quick? How'd you speak that well? And I'm like, you know how many times I've done this now? Like, I'm just I've spoke so many times and I filmed so many things. I've had so many mess ups.
Right.
It's just through repetition over and over again.
Yeah, exactly.
So what are you trying to do on the social media side now?
So, as I'm evolving into the influencer mentor side of the world, obviously I'm learning that the social media is the 800-pound gorilla that has to be, it's got to be tamed. It's got to be, harnessed, the power. And so I'm learning a lot of how you actually educate people what they want to hear, not what I want to say.
Right.
Because nobody cares what I want to say.
Yeah.
Except me.
Yep.
Right. And so I'm learning how to get in there and really educate people on what my specialty is. So my focus is mindset. That's what I'm most known for. And helping people overcome some challenges and really getting their head right. And look, I tell people, I coach people and I mentor people, some very large coaches. I coach themselves. And I tell them, first off, I said, listen, I'm not here to be your friend. I'm here to make you successful. There's a difference. I'm not going to be nice. I'm going to be honest. And I'm going to do whatever it takes. And I'll be side by side with you. And so a lot of people, what I notice when it goes to social media, look, some people like you, some people hate you.
Yeah.
Some people just want to see what you have to say and who you're going to piss off. And I'm okay with that. I mean, I don't intentionally try to upset people, but I have a certain way of thinking from sports, from growing up, from doing business, from being in different industries. And so I want to project that as much as I can, in the best way possible. Obviously, I want to make it so that it's consumable. And, I'm doing, as you know, I created a whole educational platform on Lightspeed, Brad Lee's system, and I'm doing a whole education of the mindset. I think a lot of people out there, they're very big in teaching how, which is important. But teaching you how, if you don't know that it's right for you, what's the point? Mm-hmm. And so a lot of people I notice out there, again, everybody likes the glamour, the sexiness of crossing the finish line, syndications, all this stuff. But there's so many people that just want to cross the starting line. They just want to know, how do I get started in this thing? How do I come home from a conference and tell my wife I'm getting into real estate? And have them not only say okay, but be by your side. How do you have partnerships with people and what to look out for? These are the things that people don't talk about. What do you do on day 2 when you own a rental property and the tenant says, I lost my job and I'm not leaving? They don't talk about that. Many people don't talk about that part of it. And that's what people want to know, and I've learned over the years of owning a company and working with thousands of investors in the company that I own, showing them how to grow. It's just, I think it's needed. And I think it's a void in our system. I think a lot of us, we know how to do the tactical side, but nobody talks about the strategic side. And so that's what I'm showing people, how to scale kind of in your mindset. And I think it goes congruent with learning how to do a tactic, but you got to make sure you know your you got to make sure that you know the strategy of why you're even doing it. You know, you look at a house, right? You go driving down Vegas. House on the left side is for sale. House on the right side is for sale. Which one's the one for you? And that's what people don't talk about. You know, depends on your goal. Depends on where you're going. Depends on the strategy you have.
Right.
And so, you know, a lot of people will, you know, we have these preconceived notions of what we should do, but we're just kind of throwing darts. We don't really know if that's what's right for me.
Right. You know, I think I've talked to a lot of successful people. I've coached a lot of people, and there are really two ways of being coached that I have seen, and it really comes down to which you're lacking. And so the first way is very tactical things, which is which way like I lean in all of my social media and coaching and stuff. It's like, hey, here's how to do X, Y, Z. Here's some strategies. Here's why I would do that. It's very logical based. And then you have the emotional mindset side, which you're talking about here. Like, hey, you know, how do we get your mind right to execute these tactical things? Like, because if your mind is not right and you don't believe, you have doubt, you got internal conflict with your spouse, whatever it may be, it's almost impossible to execute and have a good business.
Yeah, because look, you and I both know many people that are multimillionaires and they're miserable.
Yep.
And so they're not happy because maybe they say, yeah, I've got the decimal points in my bank account. I've got the commas, but that's not going to buy me happiness.
No.
You know, and so that's the biggest challenge is we sometimes we equate when I coach people and ask them, what do you want? You know, a lot of times they're busy telling me all the things they don't want in life. I don't want a job. I don't want to be told what to do. I want my freedom. I don't want this. And I asked them back, I say, I didn't ask you what you don't want. My question is what do you want? And many times when they tell me, they go, you know what? I don't know. I never thought about it. Like I'm always running away from what I don't want.
Yeah.
I've never really thought about what I want in life.
Yeah.
I'm like, so if you know, again, it's your reticular activating system. It's your RAS. When you're when you're focused on what you don't want, guess what you're going to get? Exactly what you're talking you don't want. It's kind of like, don't miss the putt, don't miss the putt, don't miss the putt.
Yeah.
Then you go off, you're like, shit, I missed the putt. It's
Weird.
like, you just told yourself 5 times, miss the putt. Your brain doesn't know the words don't.
Yeah,
You know?
I've heard that before.
Yeah, and so I think to me, it's very intriguing. And look, there are some great people that teach the tactical. You do a great job. There's a lot of people out there, Tarl. You know, there's so many great people that teach that. That's not my skill set. And I tell people, look, if you want to know price per square foot, that's not me.
Yeah.
If you want to know why this is even the right thing for you, that's me.
Yeah, 100%.
And I think I don't think one is more important than the other, but I do think you have to have both. I think you have to have the balance.
You're like Tony Robbins.
I'm like the Tony Robbins and the Rock of real estate, I hear.
The Rock. Well, Tony Robbins is kind of like
He
The
is
Rock.
a little jacked. Yeah, he's a little jacked.
That dude is huge.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, and I totally agree. Like, the ultra successful have both of those things, going on. Like, it's just, you cannot, I mean, look, you can be successful being tactical and doing the right things, but like you said, you're going to be unhappy in the other areas of your life.
Right.
And then there are the happiest people that, are broke, and which is fine. That's totally fine.
Yeah.
So I guess if I had to lean one way or the other, at least I'd rather be happy and my mind's right and, broke.
Yeah. And, again, a lot, look, this is being an entrepreneur, as you know, is one of the most lonely and mentally scary places anyone can ever be. Because there's nobody really by your side. There's no one to tell you if this is right or wrong. And you don't know if they have their own, you talk to someone, hey, this is a great deal. Well, it was a great deal for me, for you to buy it from me. It wasn't really a great deal for you, and so they're like, hey, that's your fault, And so it's I think being an entrepreneur is very, very scary because we come from an institutional type learning of being educated in a school, right? And then we go to a business and then we leave that business. And so we're so institutionalized. And then we get into this, shark infested waters and we don't know who's on our side, who's not. And look, nobody's going to care more for you and your family than you. Right. And so look, you have to, I tell people all the time, look, you have to take the time to build that foundation of what you want in life and where you're going. Because if you don't, what's the point? Just being busy to be busy is not, there's no reason for that. There's no goal to that. So yeah, I'm a big believer. Why? Because I did it wrong. When I first started, I bought a bunch of properties and they were the wrong properties. I mean, I was so bad. I don't know if I told you the story. I was so bad at buying properties that my wife said, if you buy another one, it better be nice because you will be living in it. Because you suck at buying houses. That was like the wake up. I was like, wow, I'm like, I guess this is bad, And the challenge is I kept thinking if I just work harder, if I focus more and I buy more, I can fix the problem, right? I had that ton of, sports. It's like, I can do this. Like I'm not going to quit. I can do this.
My plan will work.
It will work. Yeah.
I don't need to change anything, even though, I have all this data and feedback that says this is not working.
Yep, it will work. And so I learned some valuable, there's a lot of humility in that, right? There's a lot of self-checking of your ego to go, you know what? Maybe I'm not the smartest person in this. Maybe I don't know what I'm doing. It's like, and so it's hard to do that because, money is tied to our pride, right? A lot of equate their knowledge and their level of expertise in their bank account. That's why so many people want a lot of money. And when I ask people, what do you want? And they'll say, I want $25,000. I'm like, look, I can get you $25,000 and you can be freaking miserable. Yep. So congratulations, you got your money.
Yep.
But now you're going to be miserable for your life. Is that what you want? Because I've been taught it's wealth, health, and relationships. Mm-hmm. You got to be wealthy. You got to have your relationships, wealth, health. Yeah. And you got to be healthy. Look, you make all the money you can and you have a heart attack the next day.
Yep.
What's the point? Yep. Or it's like the guy who isn't super fit at the gym, but he lives in his car. Right. It's so you have to have that balance. You've got to learn it's not about money and it's not about just, being great relationships. It's about the culmination of all. It's like a three-legged stool, basically.
No doubt about it, dude. No, I love that, man. And it's been super powerful just hearing everything, you've gone through and just, dude, I love the mindset stuff. It's awesome. How can people get a hold of you and learn more about that?
Yeah, they can follow me on Instagram, Rozenberg Steve, Rozenberg Steve. They can also follow me on Facebook. They can go to my website, steverozenberg.com. And again, I'm all about helping. I get a lot of messages, and I'm a big believer. If somebody takes the time to reach out to me, I feel I have a duty and an obligation to answer them. Yeah. If I can. But I'm a big believer. So people reach out to me, they just ask me off the wall questions. They're like, oh my God, I can't believe you answered. I'm like, obviously I do it as much as possible, but again, if somebody has a question or they want to know something, I get a lot of military guys. I love helping the military. A lot of guys getting out of the military. They want to know about being an airline pilot and real estate and how because all the while of doing this business and building businesses, I've been an airline pilot.
Yeah.
So I have a career. So I tell people like, look, I do both. Like, don't tell me you can't. Tell me you choose not to. Get up at 4 a.m., go to the gym, do what you have to do. Right? Don't tell me you can't. And so I'm a big believer in trying to show people that you can do it. You just got to make choices. So anyways, I love helping people. If anyone reaches out to me, I'm always available. You can follow me. I go to some cool places. You can see the videos of them on social media of some cool destinations I travel to and other stuff.
I love seeing those, man. So Well, guys, we'll definitely link to Steve's stuff below. Definitely go follow him, go check him out. And if you're trying to level up in the mindset game, he's definitely the guy. So dude, appreciate having you on.
Thanks, man.
You the
appreciate
man.
It.
Always good seeing you.
Appreciate it, brother.
So, all right, guys, make sure you subscribe to the podcast and make sure you check out the next episode. Take care.
Thanks for watching The Ryan Pineda Show. If you want to work with me, head over to ryanpineda.com. You can find my courses, coaching programs, and upcoming events. We also have free resources you can download, so head over to ryanpineda.com.